Handheld PCs have been around for a long time in one form or another. I remember messing around with my granddad's Scion palm top when I was a kid. Well, times and technology have changed a lot since back then, and in recent years we've seen a resurgence in the handheld gaming PC market, thanks in part, no doubt, to the Nintendo Switch. Strangely, the Nintendo Switch is the only handheld gaming device that I've tried since messing around with that Scion and owning a Sega Game Gear all those years ago, not counting mobile phones, of course. So when MSI got in touch with us and asked us to take a look at their Claw A1M handheld, I jumped at the chance. Let's talk about how I found making the switch from desk to sofa. Hi guys, I'm Matt and welcome to Kit Guru. So coming into this video, I had to approach things a little differently than I usually do for my Kit Guru reviews. I have nothing to compare the Claw to, aside from my very light use of a Nintendo Switch over the past few years. So I guess this video will be for anyone who, like me, was curious or is curious about what it's been like and what it is like to use a handheld for playing PC games when you're so used to sitting next to a glass box filled with flashy lights while gripping onto a mouse and keyboard. Let's start by talking about the device itself though, and where we're kind of at today regarding this MSI handheld. MSI sent me the 1TB model to have a play with, which contains an Intel Core Ultra 7 155H CPU, and it launched at the pretty hefty price of £799 here in the UK. There is also a 512GB model that comes with a Core Ultra 5 135H, and that launched at £699. Those launch prices put it pretty close to buying an entry-level gaming laptop, so the convenience of gaming on the go without lugging around a massive bag doesn't come cheap. Since then, we've learned of the launch of a new handheld from MSI that's on the horizon, the Claw 8 AI Plus. This, along with some very tough competition, has seen the prices drop quite a bit, with both of these models of Claw A1M currently available for £499 from Currys here in the UK. As for the specs and what you get for your £500, it's a list that reads very similar to the specs of a budget gaming laptop. Focusing on the model that I've got here for the video, you get the Intel Core Ultra 7 155H CPU that I mentioned a minute ago, a 1TB NVMe SSD, and then a 1920x1080 7-inch 120Hz IPS screen with full touch capability. It's got 16GB of DDR5 memory and a 54.5 watt-hour battery, and then the combo of Wi-Fi 7 and Bluetooth 5.4 to handle wireless connectivity, and that's all packaged in a relatively small chassis. Holding on to that chassis and gripping the Claw feels pretty good. You can tell that it's had a bit of thought put into the comfort of actually using it. Each side has a prominent grip that sticks out just enough to make holding it feel natural, although I do feel it would benefit from having a bit more of a grippier material on the back rather than the smooth black plastic that coats the entire device. Button layout is also pretty comfortable. Both analog sticks and triggers have Hall effect sensors too, meaning they should last a bit longer than a traditional design, and stick drift shouldn't be too much of a concern, if a concern at all. The sticks have an asymmetrical layout, and now I'm usually a fan of a symmetrical layout, but I can't complain too much. They feel alright, and it's been comfortable using this device and testing it out for this video. As for the other buttons, on the front you've got ABXY buttons on the right and a D-pad on the left, pretty standard stuff. The sticks and ABXY buttons are all RGB backlit to add some extra gamer vibes, because every product needs that. Either side of the screen there's a pair of smaller buttons for start and options when you're gaming, like control pad buttons. And then there's buttons for quickly accessing MSI Center software and then the quick settings screen. Then on the top edge, you've got the triggers and the shoulder buttons. The triggers feel good, albeit being a bit small for my liking. The shoulder buttons, however, the LB and RB, they feel a bit mushy and they could do with being a good bit more tactile for my preference, but they just feel a bit spongy. On the back, there's a pair of paddle buttons, similar to those found on high-end controllers, like stuff that I've looked at from Scuff in the past. I personally don't use these buttons much as I just can't get used to pressing them, but it's a decent option to have if that's your sort of thing and you're used to playing with paddles on a controller. One of the things that surprised me about the Claw is the audio quality. It's got front-facing, front-firing speakers. There's one in each of the bottom corners, and their placement isn't right in the bottom corner. It's pretty well thought out. They don't get caught under your hand, and then they go pretty loud for such a small device. All of the I/O is along the top edge. You've got the power button, which doubles as a fingerprint scanner, a micro SD card slot, a USB Type-C port for charging, which also has support for Thunderbolt 4, so you could hook this thing up to an external GPU if you really wanted to. And then further over towards the right-hand side, there's a 3.5mm audio jack and then the volume rocker. One USB port is a bit tight on MSI's part, especially considering it's in use anytime the device is on charge. It'd be nice to have another one for connecting external peripherals or flash drives or extra storage or whatever. I know you've got the micro SD card slot, but another USB socket would have been nice. The screen, as I mentioned, is a 7-inch IPS panel running at 1920 by 1080 with a 120Hz refresh rate. It gets easily bright enough for use in sunnier conditions, although admittedly we're not getting very much of that here in the UK at the moment. Overall, the specs, like I said, are similar to that of a budget gaming laptop minus the dedicated GPU. We're relying on the Core Ultra 7 to do the heavy lifting when it comes to gaming. So let's move on to talk about that, the use that I've got out of it. And now I'll be honest, when first setting up the Claw and installing some games, I wasn't expecting it to set the world on fire. My opinion was probably influenced by the plethora of mini PCs that I've reviewed recently, all with a similar setup of no dedicated GPU and that integrated GPU doing the work. My expectations were pretty far away from reality, though I was actually quite surprised at how the Claw performed at times. I threw it straight in at the deep end by firing up Black Myth Wukong. This is a new title which uses Unreal Engine 5 and it can be pretty demanding at times. Running at the Claw's native resolution with all graphic settings on the lowest they'll go, it managed around 30-ish FPS. It was playable, but then there was occasional frame rate dips and stuttering. It was by no means the best experience ever, but I did manage to whittle down the health bar of a boss that I'm currently stuck on just as much as when I play and try that boss on my proper PC. Now I did record some gameplay using MSI Center, which I'll overlay in some B-roll. This is the software that handles all of the settings and customization of the Claw, but it doesn't capture the performance overlay, so it won't show you the FPS. I'll capture that with the camera of me playing it and put that in some B-roll as well. But accessing that software to capture it and to do all sorts of different stuff is done by pressing one of the buttons on the left of the screen. And then one of the buttons on the opposite side of the menu opens up the quick menu for changing the modes and stuff like that. The Claw performed a bit better than I expected in Black Myth, meaning it was actually playable. I didn't expect it to be playable at all. Going to the other end of the scale then, I gave Halls of Torment a go. This is a top-down horde survival game that I reckon could run on a Fitbit. This was a flawless experience. FPS was pinned to 120 at all times and it never skipped a beat. The controls felt fluid and all of my inputs were registered without a hiccup at all. Chilling out on the sofa slaying hordes of monsters instead of sitting upright at a desk is definitely something I could get used to. So filled with the confidence of running a pixel graphic indie game, I headed over to BattleBit, and that's where I ran into my first kind of issue, not really an issue, but a bit of a headache. There's no native controller support, and tinkering with Steam input settings, controller input settings, and the mappings and stuff quickly became tedious. The situation served as a reminder that I was playing on a PC. The tweaking that we're all used to doing as PC gamers can sometimes be a blessing and a curse. It felt like the latter in that instance. And while I'm talking of curses, I can't skip over mentioning the battery life, or the lack of battery life. MSI take a very Apple-esque approach to their claims regarding how long this device will last on a single charge. It's apparently got performance that lasts 50% longer than the market average. Whatever the hell that means. I ran the Claw with the settings being managed by the software, a mode they call AI Engine, because they had to fit AI in there somewhere because it's the buzzword of the past 2 years. Anyway, if you play anything even slightly demanding in this mode, the battery drains ridiculously fast. You'll be lucky to get 2 hours out of it. It's the biggest disappointment by a long, long way. It's a device that enables PC gaming on the go, as long as you're not going out, that is. Anyone who gets that reference, let us know in the comments. So to wrap up this video, using the Claw has been a bit of an eye-opening experience for me, to be honest. It's pretty surprising that I've gone this long as an avid PC gamer without at least trying a device like this up until now. And as I mentioned earlier, I was pleasantly surprised. The battery life that I just mentioned soured that surprise though. I've got a lengthy flight coming up and this thing will be dead before we've even left the tarmac. But for those few hours before that happened, I'd be happy playing less demanding titles to pass some time. The pricing at launch, as a reminder, was £799, and that's just insane. You can buy a budget gaming laptop for that. The new lower pricing does make it a bit easier to swallow, but it's still not a device that I'd call cheap. Again, I haven't had any hands-on time with any of the competition like the ROG Ally or the Steam Deck, so I can't give any real this or that opinions, but I'd definitely like to give them a go and get a better picture of where the handheld market is at overall. And I'm also excited to see what MSI can do with their upcoming Claw 8 AI Plus, and I hope it improves on the real-world battery life more than anything else. Obviously performance as well, but battery life has got to get better. And that's the end of the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave me a like down below if you did. Don't forget to subscribe to Kit Guru to keep up with the latest PC gaming news and reviews. And if you go down below the video, you'll find links to our merch store on little card things. And then in the video's description, you can find links to our Discord server, our Patreon page, or our website if you want to check any of that stuff out. Anyway, guys, I've been Matt. That on the desk behind me has been the MSI Claw A1M handheld. My first experience with a handheld PC, and I'm kind of intrigued. I might pick one up. I don't know which one. Let us know in the comments if you've got a handheld, which one it is, and what you play most on it. Anyway, guys, I'll speak to you in the next one. Catch you later. Look after yourselves.